Hey guys, so we're starting the day 3 video today, and today we're going to be talking about a specific type of diffusion. So in previous days we talked about regular diffusion, which was the movement of any molecule that can move straight through the membrane. Then we talked about facilitated diffusion, which is the movement of molecules through the membrane, which requires no energy and is moving from, but requires a protein to actually take place. Today we're going to talk about another type of diffusion. Again, remember, diffusion means it is a type of passive transport. It does not require any energy because substances are moving from an area where they are at a high concentration to areas where they are at a low concentration. So for example, if there is a high concentration of water outside the cell and a low concentration of water inside the cell, water will start to move into the cell until they are equal outside and inside. So equal concentrations of water outside and inside. Okay? So the type of diffusion we're going to be talking about today is called osmosis. And osmosis deals specifically with the diffusion of water. You guys know that water can pass straight between the phospholipids, but sometimes that isn't fast enough. So a lot of cells have a specific protein called aquaporin. You guys know the word aqua comes from water, and porin is like a pore. So it's like a hole that water can pass through. It's basically a channel protein that specifically allows water to enter the cell. It's made up of 4 little cylinders which allow water to go through. Okay, so water is all over the cell, but depending on the amount of solutes that are found inside and outside the cell, the movement of water is going to be different. So if I look over here I have a semi-permeable membrane with selective permeability. If you guys can see here, the little yellow dots cannot pass through this membrane, but the blue dots can pass through the membrane. So what I'm looking at here is the yellow dots are sugar and the blue dots are water. So when I have a membrane like this, what I want to do is get an equal concentration of yellow on blue on each side of the membrane. I can see here there is a lot more blue than yellow, so there's a lot more water, a high concentration of water, and a low concentration of sugar. While here, there's a high concentration of sugar and a lower concentration of water. But I want it to be that all the sugar is at the same distance away from each other on both sides of this, and the same thing with the water. So when I put a semi-permeable membrane here, the sugar cannot pass through this membrane, but the water can. So the water will continue to move outside of this area and keep filling this area until all the sugars are separated evenly from each other on the same way that is on this side, right? So basically we're trying to achieve an equal concentration of water and sugar on this side to an equal concentration of water and sugar on this side. But because the sugar can't move from side to side, the water has to, and this is why this side actually gets higher. This is called osmosis because it's the movement of water from an area where it's at a high concentration to an area where it is at a low concentration until you reach a point where the concentration of water is equal on both sides. Okay? All right, so this is basically what we're going to be talking about today because this little membrane right here is basically the same as the cell. If I have a lot of salt in the external environment of the cell, that salt can't move into the cell just on its own. So instead, water needs to move out of the cell to meet that salt, right? All right, so we have 3 different processes, 3 different types of solutions that take place during osmosis. Number 1 is called an isotonic solution. Isotonic solution is pretty much the best situation you can be in. In this situation, you have an equal concentration of water outside and an equal concentration of water inside. See how all the water and all the sugar is equally spread inside and outside of the cell? Remember, solutes can be sugar, salt, whatever it is that we're talking about. In this situation, water moves out of the cell and water moves into the cell at the same pace, which means that the cell remains the same shape. See, this is a very healthy looking red blood cell. Red blood cells have this little hole-like area in them. That's just a natural part of who they are. It increases their surface area. And this is a plant cell, or a bunch of plant cells that are happily filled with water, right? So in an isotonic solution, you have perfect balance. Water is moving into the cell and water is moving out of the cell at an equal rate, right? So that's isotonic. The next one we're going to talk about is hypotonic. Hypotonic is a situation where you have a lot of water outside of the cell and very little water inside of the cell. In this situation, water is going to keep moving into the cell until they are at an equal concentration, right? This is why, actually, newborn babies should not be given fresh water. They should be given milk or something that is full of nutrients, because newborn baby cells are very susceptible to this type of thing happening because their body has a very high concentration of water. If you start giving them fresh water, their cells actually will start to blow up like this, which is actually a really bad thing. You can give them a little bit of fresh water, but not a lot. It shouldn't be like their main thing. So guys, this is what we call a hypotonic solution, where there's a lot of water outside the cell and a little bit of water inside the cell. And remember, we are always looking for balance. So this is not an acceptable situation. For this to keep going, water has to move from outside to inside the cell. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, the cell can't actually take this. So as water continues to be pushed into the cell will go from being this nice, healthy looking cell to looking like this, a big ball. And if the water continues to enter the cell, entering, this cell actually can burst, right? Which means that the cell will die because of too much water entering the cell. All right, so that's hypotonic. And as you can see, even in the plant cell, this is a regular plant cell. This is a hypotonic plant cell. There's a lot of water in here, and this is because you put too much water on your cell, okay? And then the last one is one that I'm sure we can all relate to in some way, hypertonic. Now, hypertonic solutions happen when there is a high concentration of water inside the cell and a low concentration of water outside the cell. This usually happens when you have consumed a lot of sugar or a lot of salt. It means that there's so much salt out here that water will start leaving your cells to actually start to fill up the outside of your body with water. So you guys need to remember, like, have you ever you guys can try this experiment on your own at home. Take a cucumber, cut it into slices, and put some salt on it and see what happens. If you come back after a few minutes, the cucumber will be soft and it'll be covered in water, and that's because the salt literally sucked the water right out of the cell. That's an example of osmosis that you can see in your everyday life. Go ahead and try it on your own. Let me know what you see. So this is an example of a hypertonic solution. This is also why when you have had a meal that is very high in salt or very high in sugar, your tongue will start to feel dry and you'll feel like you need to drink so much water. And that's because water is literally being drawn out of your body. Also, after you've had a meal full of salt or sugar, you might also have to urinate a lot more, release some of that water out, and that's because water was pulled out of your cells, and now you have to get rid of it and get it out of your body along with the excess salt that you just ate. So, a hypotonic solution is one where water moves into the cell because you have low amounts of salt or low amounts of sugar, but very high amounts of water. So your cell blows up and could even explode. A hypertonic solution is where you have low amounts of water outside the cell, but high amounts of salt or high amounts of sugar or solutes, which means water needs to leave your cell to fill up this area with water, right? Now the problem with this is that when water starts to leave your cell, it will start to look like this. Your cell will start to shrivel up and become smaller and smaller and smaller as the water starts to be pulled out, which could also lead to the cell dying. So remember, this is a healthy red blood cell. This is a hypotonic, which means it's all blown up, and this is a hypertonic, which means it's starting to shrivel up and become smaller, and it could lead to cell death. And if you want to look at these, the plant cells, this is a hypotonic plant cell. This is a hypertonic set of plant cells. See how all the water was pulled out? If you look at a plant that has had salt water poured on it, this is what its cells would begin to look like, and the plant would start to wilt and bend over because that water was actually what was keeping the plant supported upright. Okay, so quick revision. Isotonic means equal movement of water into and out of the cell. Hypotonic means a lot of water moves into the cell because there's a low concentration of solutes and a high concentration of water outside. And in hypertonic, you have high concentration of solutes outside and high concentration of water inside, which means that the water will start to move out towards the solutes. Just like how salt draws out sugar from the cucumber, salt will also draw out sugar from your cells, and you will have to drink more water and go to the bathroom to release a lot of that water, so it puts your whole body out of balance. Anyway, guys, so that was osmosis, and those were the 3 types of solutions involved in osmosis. So if you're confused, you're going to come back and review this video, and tomorrow we're going to be doing a lab report about osmosis, so you will be coming back and watching this video if there was anything that you were confused about. Okay, so guys, today you have just a quiz on Google Forms as usual. Good luck.